A camera comparison between a Galaxy S23 Plus versus the Oppo Find X6 Pro. One of the downsides on the Oppo is 1080p max resolution on the front-facing camera. Let me know if that's enough for you or if you need that 4K 60. So throughout these images and videos, I do notice that the Oppo tends to be more overexposed in certain areas. Therefore, I do notice HDR is just a bit more consistent on the Galaxy. For example, the building on the right side, you can tell that it's really bright versus the Galaxy, which you can tell that it's a bit more controlled. And you can slightly see more in the shadows. But also, it can look a little bit too processed, so some people will say Oppo will look a bit more natural. Of course, that is personal preference, and during nighttime, I would say that the Oppo will tend to be a bit more brighter in most areas. For the color, I am leaning towards the Oppo just because it looks more natural, especially during this video clip where you don't see the blue light bleeding onto the walls like the Galaxy. It's kind of giving me this cyberpunk look, so the Oppo does look more natural to the eye. Moving on to the wide lens, the Oppo does have a 1-inch sensor. That means that it has more surface area to capture more light. When you're out in the city where there's a bunch of light from buildings and such, you don't see a huge difference, but when you're indoors in super dark areas or when you're in a bar, that's when you can see more of a difference. For video, even during nighttime, the highlights is still a struggle on the Oppo, not because it's just too overexposed, but I noticed that it's just very slow in transitioning into being exposed. But the 1-inch sensor is pretty good in terms of making the sky cleaner, where you can see less dots or noise floating around versus the Galaxy. Another pro about having a 1-inch sensor is the better background blur, where you don't need an AI feature like portrait mode or video portrait mode. It just naturally happens because of the bigger sensor. So the Oppo pictures do tend to look like it's coming from a camera, not like a full frame camera, but at least with 1-inch sensors, which is also the same as in point and shoot cameras. They tend to look closer to that. Especially if you want to take video, you can see a huge difference from there too. So if you do want to shoot more cinematic shots, then definitely the Oppo will be the better choice. Or if you want to do those selfie vlog shots where the background is a bit more blurry and you're in focus, the Oppo gives you that look, so it feels like it's coming from an actual camera. Now the exposure change is also the same as the ultra wide, where it is a bit slower on the Oppo, so some people might not like that, whereas on the Galaxy it's pretty instant and it's more natural to see because we tend to look at more of the brighter stuff. When you're not taking close-up pictures with the wide, the images do look pretty similar in terms of HDR, but the colors is where it's just a bit different. So some people might like the warmer look on the Oppo versus the cooler look on the Galaxy. Now for telephoto, obviously the Oppo is going to be the better choice. Highlights on certain photos definitely still is a struggle on the Oppo, but in terms of clarity, less noise, and the background blur goes to the Oppo. 3x is pretty good on both. 10x is when you start to see the difference, and of course at 30x that's when the Galaxy really doesn't look that great at all. The Oppo can zoom up to 120x, but at that point it doesn't look that great and it's not as clear, so it's more of a tool to see something from far away like a street sign across the street versus taking a good picture. But at 3x and 10x, the background blur definitely looks much better and it is more blurrier than the Galaxy. And since you're naturally zooming in to see something, definitely that something is in focus and will stick out. Moving on to portrait mode, they both can shoot at 1x and 3x. I'll say the shadows is much better on the Oppo since you can actually see my face, where on the Galaxy it is kind of dark. And shooting with the 3x on a Galaxy is not sharp at all. Doing it multiple times for many other camera comparisons or any Galaxy phones from the Ultra, the Plus, even the S22 line, it starts to become very blurry and it seems like it doesn't capture me in focus. The 1x seems to be pretty good, but I would avoid using the telephoto or the 3x. Now I am putting it in a 10-second timer and going to my spot, but I'm doing it for every phone and all the other phones seems to come out sharp, the Galaxy doesn't. But I'll say the Galaxy does have the better highlight control in portrait mode. So I'm going to end off with a bunch of selfies so you can see which one you guys prefer and also your thoughts about these two phones and their photos and videos. I do have another camera comparison with the Oppo Find X6 Pro versus the iPhone 14 Pro, so go ahead and check that one out. Thanks for watching and I'll see you guys later.